Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israel here for Renaissance Periodization, RP+, Hypertrophy Concepts and Tools, Lecture 31, second to last in this series, this short 31 lecture series. We're gonna take all of the lectures that we have learned from already, all the other 30, and you have hopefully seen, and if you haven't seen those, this lecture is gonna be a little bit confusing at times, and some holes will not be sort of evident to be filled. But we're going to take all the other 30, we're going to combine them into sort of the whole point of this into lecture 1 of building a sample program. So we're going to use all the hypertrophy concepts and tools to build a program. In the next lecture, lecture 32, we're going to learn how to modify that program once it has been built. And then you're free as a bird, let go out of its cage to go get eaten by a cat right at the window. But maybe if you make it further than that, you can be jacked. So here's the deal. Building a sample program. You hopefully have watched and understood and integrated into your thinking the preceding 30 videos, and you should be more than ready to build a program. So now that you're ready to build a program, we're going to go through each step of the program and we're going to build one together. And we're going to illustrate this sort of step by step, point by point. And hopefully this can streamline or inform your own process of program design. And remember that this is a sample program. They're not all going to look like this, but all the principles and concepts that we're going to use apply to every single program design. There are, as far as we're doing it this time, roughly 7 steps in the program design process. The first step is a needs analysis, which we've discussed a really long time ago. Really big deal. Comes out of the specificity principle. After that, when we know what the client needs, we have sort of a containment boundary around what we can do and what we have to do. Then we start actually doing the actual designing. Point number 2 is a total frequency selection. That's really advanced language for how many times a week are they going to train, not their muscles, like not the bicep or the chest or the calves, but like how many times can they come to the gym, right? Then number 3 is assigning actual muscle groups to all those sessions. So how many of those are going to be chest, how many biceps, so on and so forth. Number 4 is selecting exercises and the training methods that go with them. So are we doing barbell rows for straight sets, or are we doing cable rows for myo reps, things like that. After that, we select the volumes of training that we're going to have in week number 1 only, because after that, lecture 2 will take over and auto-regulation will be put in place. Point 6, second to last, is selecting the loads we'll be using, again in week 1. And then 7 is going to be selecting reps in reserve, how far away from failure we're going to be, again, in week 1. And then at the conclusion of this entire thing, we'll have built a program, and you will have hopefully as well, that's ready to go. But it's ready to go for 1 week. And after that, lecture 32 will take over to show us how that program will be modified. So, needs analysis. You have to figure out, first and foremost, why you're writing the program, who for. It's a really big deal, and you need at least a couple of these basics and probably some more stuff in your own needs analysis. But here's a sort of quick preview, an example of how you would do it. You need the person's training age. Okay, how long have they been training hard with weights or remotely at all with weights? There's people who have been training with weights for 15 years. They need a very different set of tools, a very different looking program than someone who's been training with weights for a year and everything in between. Biological age. You do not design the same kind of program for a 16-year-old as you do a 60-year-old. Specific exercise experience. If someone's never done hack squats before, you may not throw them into the program right away, especially if they train really far away from you. If someone hasn't done some very advanced exercises, then you may not do them. But if someone has done a bunch of different exercises, you may start with those exercises so that they get a feel for everything that your program looks like, and then eventually add in some new ones. Huge one. Goals. That's why it's all in capital letters. What are their goals? People with different goals and different desires want to do different things. Some people have the goal of getting as big of legs as possible, upper body, just arms, an emphasis here, an emphasis there, so on and so forth. Limitations are big. Back when I first started designing programs, when I was not remotely qualified to be doing so, of course, I had no education whatsoever. I was sort of on my way to maybe starting to get it soon. I would design these, what I thought were great programs that didn't take limitations into account at all. And people said, okay, I actually can't do squats because I'm hurt in my knees that just don't do squats. What else can I do? And I'm like, well, then you can't do a program. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You have to take limitations into account. There's a couple. Injuries are definitely something you want to take into account, and there's a bunch of other ones, but the other big example here is time constraints. Okay, you don't want to write someone a program that they can't finish and they don't have time for. Really good way to set up somebody for low adherence and failure. Preferences. Okay, in a more technical way, they may have a clue as to their highest SFR exercises. So you kind of want to know those. You say, hey, we have a choice here to put either incline barbell pressing or incline dumbbell pressing. Say, as far as an analytical perspective, it doesn't really so much matter. They're both compound presses. We're going to do both in the 10 to 20 rep range. So it's just your call. They may very well have clients, oftentimes, and athletes say, I hate dumbbell presses. I love barbell presses, and vice versa. Or they may not care. If they don't care, it's easy. You just do whatever you want. But they may care, right? Some people say, you can say, to a client, hey, listen, what are the exercises you like to do for these muscle groups? And you give them a list. What are your favorites? And sometimes they'll say, look, I don't know. And then great. That's actually the easy answer. The more difficult answer, but nonetheless very tractable, is when they say, here's what I really love. And I can actually rank order these exercises based on which ones I really like, how they feel, and they really pose no threat to my joints. And here's the ones that I really hate, so on and so forth. And then awesome, because they just gave you an SFR rank list, for lack of a better term. And after you know these, then you begin to write a plan, not before. Okay. A lot of folks will send me programs on Instagram, and I almost never check them, but every now and again, it's somebody I know. They'll send me a program and they'll say, hey, what do you think of this? And I don't know their needs analysis, but I don't know anything about them. I just know that they're an Instagram avatar. And what do you think of this program? I'm I can't tell you what I think of this program because I have no idea about the background, right? If I know the background, then I can say, okay, this program is stupid as fuck and you're an idiot, right? Or it's actually great and I should hire you. Sample client. So we're going to, each one of these, we're going to talk about the theoreticals and we're going to demonstrate them being used on a sample client, somebody I just created out of thin air. So we'll say training age for this client is 5 years. So they've been training relatively hard or with weights in the gym for 5 years. Their biological age is 40. So they're 40 years old. Cool. That's someone with pretty mature, but no crazy limitations, and they're not like geriatric or anything. Specific exercise experience. This person has done essentially all basic compounds and most machines. So this is big because when you're like leg press, they're like, yep, done it. I know the one at my gym works really great. I really like it. You're way ahead of the game, as opposed to your like squat. And they're like, that's the thing with your arms. You're like, ooh, okay, we're going to have to take a different route with this, right? Their goals, just as an example, is they want to enhance hypertrophy of the whole body. Super. Just want to get jacked all over. Limitations, they say they have no limiting injuries, right? And the injuries thing is rather simple to deal with. We won't be dealing with it in this example, but injuries are pretty straightforward. You just say, okay, what can't you do? What hurts beyond reproach? And they say, okay, this I can't do, this I can't do, that I can't do. You stay away from that, and then maybe you start to weave it in light later, and it turns out they can really do it if they change their technique, so on and so forth. But it's injuries just a matter of staying away from stuff that's bothering them. But no limiting injuries for this fake gentleman here. And he says, realistically can only train 5 times a week and 1.5 hours per session. He's got wife and kids at home. He gets off work at 5. They expect to see him at 8. There's some traffic in between. 1.5 hours is all he can give. Okay, sweet. Preferences. This person's like, look, I don't really like machines. I like hardcore compound barbell work. I feel the best there. And I really just would want to do more of it. And to you, that's like, oh, sweet. That's not a big deal to me. So at least for the first mesocycle, while we're exploring, we can absolutely cater to your preferences. So now we know the client. We move on to the next step of total frequency selection. And that's how many days a client can train per week total, not per muscle group. That comes second or after this. It has to be a lowball estimate, okay? Because you don't get any extra credit for missed sessions and you actually get downgraded for missed sessions, okay? A lot of people will say, look, I want to train 6 days a week. And you say, okay, can you? They're like, man, I can for sure train 5, but 6, that'd be tough. It's okay. If I write you a 6-day-a-week training program, at least twice during the mesocycle, you're going to tell me, hey, I never got in Saturday. What do I do? The answer to that is there's nothing pretty to do. It's a big problem. On the analytical front, it's a big problem to miss sessions because you have a lack of data about auto-regulating sessions that came before, and you have a lack of stimulus and a feed-forward problem and a feedback problem. Missing sessions is a bad deal. And also, the number of sessions you do per week does correlate with hypertrophy, but it's a curvilinear relationship. You don't get a ton more out of 6 sessions versus 5 sessions. So if someone can for sure make 4 or 5, you take the for sure. Worst case scenario, if a month later, a mesocycle later, they knocked every session out of the ballpark, they never missed one, and they go, look, dude, honestly, I can actually make 5 sessions, not 4, like I said. You can always add 5. But when you add 5, they feel great about it. When you subtract one because they sucked, no one feels good about that. So low ballpark. You can always move up. Moving down is more painful than moving up. So for the sample client, they said they could do 6 days a week when you talk to them, but they sort of look tentative, right? A lot of times clients will want to impress you and sort of want to convey an air of dedication. So you'll, hit them up over email or whatever, or you talk to them on the phone or in person at your gym, and they say, how many days a week can you train? And they're like, well, I'm really serious. I'm really serious. Right? So what do you think? I think 6. Yeah, 6. I think 6 is doable. You got a Monday thing, got to move, but yeah, 6. And you're like, man, boy, that did not sound convincing at all. And then you say, okay, what about 5? And they go, oh my God, 5 for sure. No problem. 5 easy. Monday through Friday, easy. Take it. Do it. So we're going to choose 5 sessions for this sample. It's the clear choice. And if the 6th one floats up over the course of several mesos, we'll take that as well. Next step is to assign muscle groups to sessions. So first of all, you have to figure out what days of the week the client can train reliably. Okay. Number of days per week and which days they train on are 2 different things. Okay? You can train 4 days a week, but it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, odd program. Or you can train 4 days a week and you can train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, much better program because it's spread more evenly throughout the week. And how you cluster muscle groups will change based on that. So not only should you, before you assign muscle groups to assignment to sessions, you should get an idea of when they can put their sessions, and better to have just distinct days. Like Thursday, you do this, not like we get 4 days a week. That's called a floating schedule when you give someone just 4 sessions a week and do them whenever. That has its downsides. It's definitely a good thing for people that need it, but most people don't need it. And the extra flexibility comes at a downside. It comes at a cost of sort of program fluidity. So if they don't need it, which most people don't, most people are on a pretty good schedule. They know where their lives are going, especially people that work 9 to 5. Just put them on a schedule of Thursday, you do this, not like day 4, you do this or something like that. So once you figured out, you can put your muscle groups sort of rather symmetrically, dump them into the program. And if the priority is on certain muscles, then you can assign higher frequency. If the other muscles are being deprioritized, lower frequency, right? And in general, use a frequency, especially when you're beginning with someone, of 2 to 4 times per week per muscle group, right? And that's pretty straightforward. So, you have you can train chest twice a week and back twice a week and legs twice a week, and then arms and shoulders 4 times a week. So you can distribute that the week as you see fit, as long as it's relatively symmetrical. You don't want to do chest Monday, chest Tuesday, and then the rest of the week, no chest. You want to do like chest Monday, chest Thursday, back Monday, back Thursday, and then legs and arms on, or legs and arms and shoulders on Tuesday, Friday, and then, a bit of arm work as well on the Monday, Thursday after the push pull. Boom, there you go. There's this magic split I made up in my head, right? Fairly evenly symmetrically split. Later, as the client does the program, you can actually see feedback on how your selected frequency is working, and you can alter that as needed, right? Because we're going to have some auto-regulation to play with. We're going to have data on how good is our frequency, and we can slowly inch it up or inch it down per muscle group as required. So for the sample client, they are doing full body, and they have 5 days a week to do it. And you talk to them, and they say Monday through Friday is their best bet, like weekends or, family and all this other stuff. There are tons of splits to do. And splits, as a couple of people have sort of pointed out recently very well, Eric Helms and his team, Jeff Nippard, splits there's nothing magic about splits. They're a very top-down way of looking at things. It's better to look at things bottom-up in this case. You train muscle groups when they're ready to be trained, when they're recovered from their past training, and you train them 2 to 4 times a week, and whenever they fall, whenever they fall. So for our example, we'll just use a split that hits legs, chest, and back 2 times a week, and shoulders and arms 3 times a week, because they tend to recover faster and can be trained more often. That's it. So in this split, we have Monday, quads, hams, and calves, Tuesday, chest, side delts, triceps, biceps, and so on and so forth. Feel free to pause the video at this time and read the rest of the split. You guys know how to read. I won't do it for you. So here's our split. It's not the split. It's a split. And if you make your split differently, no big deal. Now, we go on to the next step of selecting exercises and training methods. To start, you can use more client favorites. If they don't have any, you're the artist. Do whatever you like, but make sure, I'll skip down to the last point there, to match the exercises in the position of the workout and the training method. And you already know how to do this. Remember, compound, heavy basics earlier in the exercise, and isolation movements, and especially movements that require or when you're doing things like myo reps and drop sets later in the workout. Okay. So make sure that you don't do like myo rep cable curls first and then do rows after that with a barbell. Other way around is a really good idea, and so on and so forth. Start with movements that the client is experienced with, and then you can also introduce new movements slowly over the course of the next and the following mesocycles after that. So for the first mesocycle, we're going to have all the same exercises. We're going to play it conservative to whatever the client's used to, more or less. If we have a lot of access to the client, if we are their personal trainer, we can add new movements, probably in the second meso or even in some of the first. But we're going to see how they do with their favorites. And if they don't have favorites, there's the more core foundational movements are probably best to start with. And then we're going to thread out after that. Notice there's a big piece missing here. Which are the best exercises? We already know that based on SFR and RSM and STR and all the other stuff you need. So there you go. You have a whole lecture to several lectures to go back to on that. So for our sample client, we're going to insert exercises here, and you can see them all here. So for quads, we do high bar squats, hamstrings, lying leg curls, calves, machine calves for just Monday, and you can read all the other days. Notice that on Wednesday, for back, we have 2 exercises. And then down there, the little asterisk says that if you have an exercise in which they'll need more than 6 sets per muscle group, for sure, at any point towards the end of accumulation, then you probably want to use 2 exercises per muscle group to start. So you know you're going to be doing 10 sets of back. You don't want to just pick barbell rows for back that day. You want to pick barbell rows and pull-ups or something like that. Next, selecting volumes. So check this out. We already have our weekly plan. We have all the muscle groups we want to train, and we have all the exercises picked out. Sweet. And feel free to pause this and take a look at the exercises. Again, just ideas, but they should concord pretty well with our principles that we've established and what exercises should generally go first and should go last and so on and so forth. And now it's time to select volumes, which is again very easy because you've watched all the other 30 lectures. We just start at MEV estimates for each muscle group, minimum effective volume. How do you know that? Well, you have some good literature on it from comprehensive reviews like that have James Krieger of weightology.net has published. Roughly, the volume range for best adaptations is something like 3-ish to 10-ish sets per muscle group per session. So you're going to start in the 2 to 4 range unless you have a lot of data on the client from before. And if the client has trained with you before and you're trying to sort of scientific program design for the first time, or to try and sharpen up your tools, or they come to you and they report what they've done, and maybe their MEV is very low, or maybe it's much higher, start, always play conservative no matter what they say. But sometimes conservative is 2, and sometimes conservative is 5 sets per session per muscle group when you're starting up. Lower is almost always better than higher. Moving up is easy. Moving down requires an admission of guilt, sort of defeat. And also it sort of poisons the well to some extent with a huge amount of front-loaded fatigue and risks injury right up front, because injury risk is actually predicated considerably on how much you elevate volume one week to another. And if it's a big jump, could be not great. So they could be deloading and then you go, bah, and they get hurt. So it's always time to move forward after. Best analogy there, since I'm still dieting and we're using restaurant analogies all the time, best analogy there is, if you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, start out with a small plate because you can always just go get another plate, right? But if you get like 10 plates in front of you and you finish like 3 of them and your eyes were bigger than your stomach, then it's embarrassing and annoying and you just cost the buffet a lot of money and there's people in Africa that don't have food, that whole thing. All right. So for the sample client, we just assign volumes. So for example, for Monday, 4 sets of high bar squats to start. That's week 1. 3 sets of lying leg curls, 5 sets of machine calves, and so on and so forth. You can look at all these volumes at your leisure by just simply pausing the video. And remember, there's nothing magical about these. They're just sort of in that pretty decent range, and this would be something you would sort of figure out on the fly with the client and take into consideration their training history and so on and so forth. Now it's time to select loads. So we have a pretty good program so far. If we go back to the last slide with the sample client program, and we have, all the volumes there. We've got the days, we've got the muscle groups, we've got the exercises, and we have the starting volumes. This is really good. Now we select loading, and we already know the loading ranges. 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. We're going to bias the early in the week loads higher. So Monday, Tuesday, let's see, what days are they training on? Scroll back. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So Monday, Tuesday are probably going to have a bit more heavy loading. And Thursday, Friday is probably going to have a bit more lighter loading, and Wednesday might be sort of intermediate, right? And we're going to, of course, match loading to exercise order and session. Heavier exercises first, lighter ones later. And, of course, match loading to exercise and method type. Isolated machine stuff probably on the lighter end, and compound barbell, dumbbell stuff, especially barbell stuff, on the heavier end. Not rocket science, and all the justification and education for that is in the other videos on load management and so on and so forth that we've done so far in this series. So for the sample client, again, just a sample, we have there it says, Monday. Actually, let's pick another day because we've been just badgering Monday. Thursday is our other leg day. We start with 3 sets of stiff-legged deadlifts in the 5 to 10 rep range. Okay, great. 4 sets of leg presses in the 10 to 20 rep range. And that'll wake you up. And then 5 sets of calf raises in the 20 to 30 rep range. Awesome. That looks pretty good. So you can pause this anytime you like and take a look at the specifics I've chosen here. Just examples, but they should, again, fit well with our sort of preconceived ideas about how this should work. And then the easiest part is selecting reps in reserve. There's really no magic here. Usually you just go 3 or 4 reps in reserve on the first week, and we'll go up from there, of course. If the individual is time constrained and their total volume over the week, especially even if they go into accumulation, will just never get high enough to really even touch their MRV, then, and usually it means they can do like only 3 or 4 sessions a week, sometimes even 5 or 6, but they can only train for an hour, hour and a half at a time, or they recover very easily, and maybe they're not very strong. And if they're sort of time constrained that way, you can start with like 2 RIR, even more aggressively. For a first-time program, I would start at no more than 2 RIR because you want to let people sort of swim before they start free falling. So you select RIRs, and now we just put them right in. So we have this next thing. So Tuesday, we have incline bench, 4 sets of 5 to 10 reps, or in the 5 to 10 rep range weight, 2 reps in reserve, and then upright barbell rows, same idea, 2 reps in reserve, 2 reps in reserve. Everything's 2 RIR because that's week 1 only. We'll get to how to modify it in the next lecture. We're done. We've got a program, folks. That last, second to last slide, right before the slide that says done, okay, that is a completed program. It tells us how to train for 1 week. Notice it doesn't have any loads in it, but we'll fill in exact loads in the next lecture as examples. The way you fill in the loads, though, is actually very straightforward. If you know the client's strength, they filled out a sheet of their, let's say, 10 RMs. You can just put in loads that you think are in these rep ranges. The great thing is these rep ranges are super wide. So if they say, my best squat is 185 for 10, and you're trying to say what's a 5 to 10 load, 2 reps in reserve. So that's basically first set would be, 8 reps or whatever. First set would be like their 12 RM potentially. It's the lightest weight you would use. And the heaviest would be 7 RM. So you think, okay, well, they gave me 185 for their 10 RM. Sounds like 185 is our winner. And you just start with 185. And if you chose to do 175 or 195, really not a big deal. Just all you need to hit is ballpark, which is a great way that hypertrophy training science happened to have unfolded, is that the specific weights really don't matter a ton as long as they're in a general range, and then how you alter them from there is much more important. All right, we're done. We have a program. And next up, we have another in-depth lecture. So tune in for that one when it comes out, and it's going to talk about, now that we have a program, we're going to use this exact program as a start, how we're going to modify it as the clients execute the plan. That's that, and we'll see you next time for Lecture 32.